Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. My name is Rusty Mahalik. I am the Library Director at Goldie Beacon College in Wilmington, Delaware. I convene the ACRL Leadership Discussion Group, and we're very pleased to have Melissa Mallon here to talk about her article on burnout and how do we get out of that. So we're still tired, a journey toward authenticity and away from burnout. I'm going to turn off my camera and give you over to Melissa now.
Thank you so much, Rusty. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you all here today. Depending on where you're joining from, it may or may not be around lunchtime for you. So as someone who was just in a meeting and had my camera off eating my lunch, I wholly recommend eating your lunch or taking a break and doing whatever is best for you in this context. So I am so pleased to be here today to talk with you all. And let me get my slides going here. Okay, so as Rusty mentioned, I am here to talk about burnout and leadership and authenticity and a whole number of other things. But I also recognize that this is a discussion group, and so I want to leave plenty of opportunity for you all to participate and share your thoughts as well. So I'm Melissa Mallon. I'm the Associate University Librarian for Teaching and Learning at Vanderbilt University. And again, super excited to be here. So why are we here? I am very grateful to Rusty for inviting me to be part of this discussion series. I always love talking about leadership, but the sort of crux or focus of today's talk is related to an article I wrote a couple of years ago called On Authenticity, Exhaustion, and Finding a Spark. So this was for the Leadership Reflections column in the journal Library Administration. And I want to give a big shout out and thank you to someone many of you probably know, Andrea Falcone, who was the recent editor of that column. And so she invited me to write a column about leadership. And I sat down and I tried to think about what I was going to write about. And I'll talk a little bit more about my process in a few minutes. But the more I thought about it, the more I just was like, I'm so tired. And I feel like, I think I'm burnt out. I think that's a thing. And so that's what I wrote on. And it was actually a very, very cathartic experience for me. And I am glad to have had that opportunity. So I'm even more happy to have the opportunity to share and discuss this with you today. So there's a citation just in case. Oh, and let me just also say, totally fine if you haven't read this article. It's not very long. It is pretty casual, but you don't need to have read that to participate today. Okay, so before we get in any further, I want to just talk a little bit about what today's session is and what today's session is not. So I think, as we all probably know, especially when you're talking about things like burnout and being tired and exhausted, sometimes things can evolve or devolve rather into complaining or, grousing about work and colleagues and all of that. Sometimes even venting is a thing that happens. That's not what today is about. I think there's a lot to vent about in our world, a lot to be frustrated and kind of exhausted about in our world. But I also think that it's good to have some time to kind of put that aside and not delve into those complaining situations. So we're going to try to avoid that today if we can. This is also not some sort of magical here's what burnout is and here's how you cure yourself of it. I do not have that power. I wish I did. But I don't mean to kind of approach this as something that is a joke or light. Burnout is a very real thing at whatever level you're experiencing it. So this is not an attempt to kind of cure that sort of thing. So just know that we're not going to try to come up with any magical answers, but hopefully we can help kind of talk through some of these issues together. And then finally, this is definitely not an opportunity to invalidate or disrespect anyone's experience. We all are on our own journey, both through leadership and hopefully not through burnout, but if you are, then you're on your own journey there. So I just want to make sure that we, if we are sharing, however much you choose to share, that you realize everyone is experiencing this sort of thing in their own way. So on that side of things, what are we doing? What is this session? Really, this is a chance to reflect on burnout, especially as leaders, no matter what level you're leading in libraries or just in your life in general. This is a chance to kind of reflect on what it means to be a little bit at the end of your rope, or even not necessarily knowing you're at the end of your rope, but what does that look like? And then we're also going to talk about what it means to be an authentic leader and what that even means. And again, this is going to be very dependent and different for each of us. And then finally, even though we are recording, know that this is a safe and comfortable space where you can share your thoughts or frustrations. That's okay too. You can feel free to send me any comments that you want to make anonymously via DM in the chat, but then there's also going to be some opportunities for you to share in a kind of anonymous forum as well. So I do hope that you will share and kind of feel welcome and encouraged to participate in the conversation. So in that case, I also am very curious what kind of vibe everyone is feeling today. So what mood are you in? Again, like this is a discussion group. So I do recognize the need to not just talk at you for an hour. And I also am hint to the title, I'm too tired to talk at you for an hour. So I want to give you plenty of opportunity to engage, but I want you to do that in the way that you are comfortable with. So probably you're all familiar with Menti. If you go to either scan the code if you have your phone with you, or menti.com and enter the code 4338173. And so we're gonna go here. Take a look. Once again, here is the information. So I'm going to give a couple. If you see a little thumbs up or a heart, just click one of those so I know that you have you've gotten in here. Again, I feel like we need some music going in the background here, something very soothing and calming. Okay. All right, looks like we got a pretty good amount of you here. So if you need that information later, I will share it again. But let's look at our first poll here. So this is what vibe are you feeling today? Like what kind of interaction are you anticipating for today? And please be honest. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of that kind of, I want to engage, but I don't really want to have to talk. So I'll tell you, I came prepared for any number of responses to this question, but I had a feeling that we would be more on the left side of the screen. So that's definitely the way we're going to approach most of this today. Okay. We will have some other opportunities for sharing mic off if you do want to do that. We're probably going to skip the breakout discussions, I think, in this case, just because unless two of you want me to send you off into a breakout room. But I think we'll have some opportunity. I know we will have some opportunities for you to come off mic and share with the big group if you would prefer to do it that way. Okay, thank you so much. Let's go back. Okay. So referencing the article again, and I am going to share a little bit about what I was thinking when I wrote that article, and then we'll kind of pull it back to the now. One thing to just set the stage is when I wrote this article, it was late 2022, so spring semester 2022. I think we're getting to the end of the academic year. And I have been really curious, and if you want to share in the chat, I would love to see some information from you all about like what your vibe was in the academic year 21-22. We on my campus, I'm at Vanderbilt, we were back. So there was a real push from our administration to be on campus, to be present. We're a heavy undergraduate kind of residential campus. And so we had a lot of things just kind of back. Keeping in mind that this was during some of the COVID variant spikes, coming off of, the year of mostly remote work. So at the time of writing this article, I was definitely, I was tired. I was really tired. I was trying so hard to be optimistic and to just sort of be like kind of the positive person that I think a lot of people, some of my friends are on this call here, would probably agree. I tend to be an optimistic and positive person. And that's how I choose to approach my professional life, because I think, what else are we going to do besides try to be positive? So I was trying to hold on to that, especially because, we had students that were coming back to campus that hadn't been here before, right? They'd been remote their first year, or they'd been remote mostly the previous year. And we had a lot of our library staff that were really nervous and stressed out about coming back, rightly so. Vaccines were still sort of a new thing. So there's a lot going on, and there was a lot. And I'm seeing this reflected in the chat here too. Brooke, drowning, undervalued. Yeah, there was a lot of that. Ashley kicked that up too. Drowning, exhausted, undervalued. So, and I think that kind of speaks to the weariness that I was feeling at that time too. I mean, I was physically tired, but I was just like, we all had come off this year of last minute decisions and changes, and just really trying to stay alive and make sure no one got sick when they came to the library, making sure, my team was safe and protected. And then this year that we just kind of come back and you're like, I don't even know how to handle this. We were also dealing with changes in leadership at our university level. We had a new provost and a new chancellor. And then we were in an interim period. We had an interim university librarian at that point, and getting ready for a new university librarian to come in. And I was also new in the position I'm in now. So I've been in my AUL position for a couple of years now, but I was transitioning from a previous position here at Vanderbilt into this new one. And so I had all of that kind of, I'm just, trying to get used to all of these new factors. And then here is this really intense year. And so, in the article, I sort of go into that I was really struggling staying engaged at the end of the semester, just really kind of stressed out about what I was doing and if I was even doing a good job. But I did manage to find a lot of, maybe not a lot, that's taking it a little too far, but I was finding some energy and some value in these little, what I was calling small sparks, that was the work of my colleagues. And I'm not going to really go into that here. You can check that out in the article if you want to. But just kind of stepping outside of myself and seeing the work that was happening across the libraries and across the profession, I really felt like we were all kind of banding together in a way, even though we were all feeling so exhausted and undervalued. That really helped me kind of realize, okay, it's not all bad. Like there's, some good things happening here. But at the same time, I just had this like deep level exhaustion. And I think preparing for this talk today made me revisit that a little bit. I remember working on I think it was an instruction section committee that I was on, and we were planning a session on burnout. And we were talking, this was in spring 2022, and we were talking about the fact that we all felt too burnt out to plan a session on burnout. But I don't think I really realized at the time that I was experiencing burnout. I had done some research on what that means before, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But I was so just kind of trying to keep my head above water that I didn't realize how much just everything that was going on was affecting me. And this isn't to say that we don't all feel that way, you know, especially right now, this time of the semester or this time of the year. You just, you know, you have that kind of exhaustion of just going. And I'm not great at keeping up on emails anyway. But I was kind of reflecting as I was writing that article that, like, I don't feel like being positive here. I'm having trouble coming up with some, you know, good things to say. And I just sort of felt like I wasn't doing great. And so it got me to kind of start thinking about it. And yeah, Ashley, absolutely. Like, talking about burnout is really hard when you realize you're feeling burnout. And I think too, and so I'm going to go to the next slide here, but I think we were all hearing, and we still are hearing, so much about burnout. Like, I'm looking at a book on my bookshelf in my office here that was a book, I don't know if y'all remember, came out sometime during that year about burnout. And there was a discussion group on campus that was reading the book and talking about it. And it was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I think combined with that was the discussion about self-care and wellness, which are so important and really something that we all need to take care to do. But taking a nap wasn't working. Doing yoga and meditation was not working. And I think when you start really investigating what burnout truly is, you realize that it's not just something that can be cured with self-care. And oftentimes, if you start to have this kind of thought, I think maybe I'm burnout, you've already been burnout. So it takes a while to kind of recognize that. So burnout, in the way that I have been sort of researching it and thinking about it, is more from an occupational perspective. There's a lot of different ways to think about burnout and what that means. But I have turned back to the work of Maslach and Johnson, who came up with this sort of burnout inventory. And again, it's kind of focusing more on an occupational perspective of burnout. And they have a really nice little scale here that helps you kind of think about whether or not you are burnout and what does that look like. And so I had researched this before I wrote this article. And so I returned to that and I took the little quiz or the little instrument here and realized, yeah, I think maybe this is something that's happening. And so I was kind of curious with you all how you're feeling in this regard. So that's going to be our next through here. We already answered that. Our next little poll here is having you reflect, and I'm going to be quiet for a second and let you reflect silently, but where you feel like maybe you're fitting on the scale. Yeah, I feel you on the fatigue. Okay, so it looks like we're all pretty well over across the lines here. I think the emotionally draining component and feeling fatigued being higher up here on the scale is not a surprise at all. Maslach and Johnson say that you're truly officially burnout in terms of their definition if you rate highly on all aspects of this scale in the official definition. But that doesn't just take away from the fact that even if you're like middle to high on any of these pieces, you're experiencing the effects of burnout. I think the one about the lack of caring towards colleagues is an interesting one. And Paige has mentioned something in the chat here about the results of caring for colleagues and others. And I think we really hit that very hard in the kind of 2020, 2021 year. Just that extreme level of caring both for ourselves and then for others. But the way I think about this one is not that you don't care about people, but this is what I think I was experiencing when I wrote this article, was just having compassion fatigue and just feeling like, I'm really trying, and I'm trying to be as empathetic and compassionate as possible, but I'm having trouble like kind of getting that extra little bit. And so I think that I just want to point out that that's not necessarily you don't care about people, but that you're having trouble kind of sharing beyond the capacity that you have. Okay, so what does this mean for managers and leaders, particularly in libraries, and thinking about what this looks like? So one of the things I was noticing, and I'm guessing from the chat here, it seems like the others were having a similar observation too, but that there was definitely a bit of a delayed response in terms of how I was observing my colleagues having kind of these characteristics of burnout. I think again, like we were so like extra on the empathy in the heavy pandemic years, and then we moved into the kind of like absolutely still part of the pandemic, but in many of our organizations, as I'm seeing here, or just in the world, and especially in the United States, we sort of got to this like, oh, it's over, we're post-pandemic now. That 2021, 2022 year, so much was just going all back to the way it was. And so I think that there was kind of this delayed response of you were just like, at the max in terms of empathy and compassion. And then it became really hard to sort of keep that level up, partly because of the exhaustion and just partly because of the way the world was. And so that can be really hard as a manager, because you are, or a leader of any type, you're working to bring your team back to campus, back to the more of the kind of reality of what the new, I hate that we're still saying like the new world, or new reality, but whatever this kind of after the early days of the pandemic reality was. Anyway, I feel like there was this kind of long delayed reaction that made it hard to navigate for yourself, but then also help your team and others that you work with navigate those changes as well, because you're just trying to get through it and you're trying to kind of keep your head again above water. Also, I think burnout we probably all know this is no surprise, but especially troublesome for service professionals of most professions revolving around community engagement or working with others. I think especially after the kind of twin public health and social justice crises that we were dealing with in the early 2020s, that made it, there were like all of these levels that made it particularly hard for those of us working in service professions. And I think it's really important to note that burnout impacts library workers of colors at much higher rate. Katrina Davis-Kendrick has done research on this that shows that racial and ethnic minority librarians experience burnout and low morale at a much higher rate than their white colleagues. And of course, there's additional impact factors there, such as stereotype threats and deauthentication. And so there was a lot of extra layers that we were going through in those early 2020 days and still are navigating right now. And I've got links to all of this research that I'll share with you at the end. But another just implication that I think is worth noting in terms of feeling burnout in your work is that we're meant to, as leaders, we are meant to, and hopefully just do this implicitly, model and coach our teams on keeping balanced and recognizing if burnout is a factor. But how do we do that if we're suffering ourselves, right? How can we help others recognize that this is happening if we're not even recognizing that it's happening within our own work. So I'm really curious what is contributing to your burnout and how it's affecting your leadership in particular. So I've seen a lot of factors mentioned in the chat, but I am curious what this means in terms of your leadership. So this one is not a poll. We are doing, I've got a Jamboard open here, and I put the link in the chat for you. So if you would like to contribute something to the board here, almost RIP to Jamboard. I don't know if everyone knows that it's being retired at the end of 2024. So this is I think my swan song with using Google Jamboard. I know I'm really going to miss it too, but I decided I'm using it anyway until it's gone. But if you haven't used it, there's a little text box here. You can add a little sticky note over on the left here, but also please feel free to put in the chat. And then would anyone like to come off mic and make any comments? You're welcome to. So this is just, again, thinking about how is your leadership affected based on burnout that you may or may not be experiencing?
Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
This is Caroline, University of Pittsburgh. I would say that one of the things that has affected it is during the lockdown and various kind of phased return, staff who were very unhappy about the university's policy saw it as their direct supervisors policy instead.
Yep.
So that was really hard. When people didn't agree with the university's policy, they saw it as me, not being the person that was listening to them. So that has been difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that is something that we tend to deal with a lot as managers anyway, just on any number of weird policies that we're supposed to pass on. But in particular, when it is something that you may not agree with yourself and that you're also feeling is, potentially unfair or unsafe, that balance of trying to, do what is frankly our job as managers and leaders to kind of pass this along to the rest of our team, and then also you have to hold the brunt of their ire, and that's really hard. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of notes here, a lot of different factors at play here, and I've noticed this in the chat as well, but many comments related to both turnover in your department, in your libraries, and then having some really, really difficult situations related to losing a colleague or losing family members, and then how do you navigate the grief aspect of that with everything that's going on, especially if it's a team member and you need to try to help your team get through that grief process as well. Lack of interest in job. I know that one of the results of a lot of the turnover is that many people had to put on new hats or take on interim roles. And, I mentioned my own experience with starting a new position during this time. And that was one that I wanted to start. I was excited for it. I loved my job, but it was really hard to do it, to make that transition during those, the last several years, and to have to do that when you don't really want to, or you're just kind of helping out the team. That's really tough.
And Melissa, this is Kim Bailey.
Hey, Kim.
Hi. I might just add that when the pandemic hit and a lot of people retired and budget cuts were going on, some of those people that were cut permanently, they didn't realize the effects that they had across everybody. Yes. So I feel like even though we're at full staff, we're -3. It's, I'm always, it always feels like you're still minus that 3 because they did so much more than just their own jobs.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a while for that to show up, and you may never get past it, right? I mean, hopefully you'll get past it, right? Like it will, you will move on. But I think it's difficult because you get, like, you're just trying to maintain the status quo, and then you lose a big chunk. And then how do you move progressively beyond that? Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Kim. All right, so these are great. Please continue adding to the Jamboard or posting. I'm gonna have us move on a little bit, and then we've got some more stuff that we will talk about here in a few. Sorry, I'm navigating all of my Zoom windows over here. Okay, so this brings me to the kind of second topic of the presentation and what I was focusing on in the article, which is the idea of authenticity. So just like with burnout, there are different types of definitions about what authentic leadership is, or even what authenticity is. And I don't want to try to define it in any certain way, because I think particularly in terms of authentic leadership, that can be very dependent and context specific on the individual and the type of leadership environment that you are in. I am curious. I'm going to give you another opportunity to weigh in here on a poll, just to get a sense of what does authenticity as a leader mean to you? When you hear this phrase, and kind of likewise, do you feel like you're an authentic leader? What does that look like? Like, I'll tell you, you'll hear what I think it means, but I'm curious what y'all think it means. Okay, honesty and transparency, humanity, vulnerability. Yeah. Lots about transparency and honesty. I'm not a robot. I'm not your AI leader over here. No offense to ChatGPT. Oh, I like this one about actions and words being congruent. So you're not saying one thing and acting in a different way. Not compromising, being real, humility. Yeah. 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 So much of this, right, is about, ethical principles, honesty with boundaries. That's good. Integrity, not hiding behind a facade. Just humanity, right? It's about being a human being. And I think, you can have varying levels of authenticity from, your own, just who you are, to how you react with others and in your position, and how you navigate with your team. So this is great. This all really feels very close to the way I think about authenticity too. And as I was working on that article, I was feeling like, oh, I'm burnt out, and should I even be writing this? What do I have to share? And then I started thinking, well, hold on, like, I sat about writing this article and being frustrated that I wasn't writing about it from like a really optimistic, oh, we're moving on, things are going to be okay. I was really upset with myself as I couldn't write the article in the way that I thought that I should, and the way that I thought that I needed to. And then I started really reflecting on what I value from leaders that I work with, but then also what I try to model for my team, which is exactly what you all were saying: being transparent, showing that I'm a human, and understanding that other people, are humans as well. And then that really helped me kind of reframe the way I was thinking. And I'm not saying that like turning into your authentic self is what will cure burnout or what will get you past it. But I am telling you honestly and in a vulnerable way that that's where I had to admit to myself that my authentic self. I wasn't sharing my authentic self. I wasn't being the type of leader who I thought, like I don't think it's good to just be positive all the time if it's not the case, and if it's not appropriate. And I really, like, this is also just a life lesson that I have learned in the last couple of years, is that I think I would tend towards positivity and optimism when maybe it wasn't totally warranted, or that was my coping mechanism, or just the way that I kind of decided to make it through. And I think that there's so many things that we see during times of really intense crises or stress. And I think being true to feeling vulnerable and letting your team know, or your colleagues know, that, like, I'm not at my best right now. And like, I've got a lot of stress that I can't I can't just ignore it, right? And so all of that to say, I think one of my big takeaways from this kind of journey is that in order to be a truly authentic leader and to be authentic to myself, I needed to be more honest when I was feeling a little bit stressed out. And for me, that also meant, like, just stepping away. Being a leader doesn't always mean being at the front of the room and guiding people and being the one to kind of to chart the path. Sometimes it means letting somebody else step in and take up the charge. And so that idea of, like, really relying on my fellow leadership team to help kind of think through, how do we get through this together? Like, I can't do this piece. Can you please help me with it? All of that has really helped me kind of move forward in terms of kind of that burnout feeling. I just saw a page. No worries. We're not going to use the Mentimeter anymore. That was our last one. So no worries if you can't get in. Anyway, okay. So this is another opportunity for you all to do some reflection. We're going to go back to the Jamboard. And this one, I'm just really curious how everyone feels about the idea of authenticity as a leader. And what does that mean for you? We've defined what we think authenticity means, but how are you embracing trying to be authentic as a leader? And again, if you would like to come off chat, come on mic, come off mute. How long have we been Zooming? Please feel free to do that. Yeah, it's an interesting idea, David, thinking about burnout kind of as a catalyst for something new. I think that's sort of what I was going through. I'm not an artist, but I guess well, it's on here, so I'm saying it. I see one that says appropriately being quicker to call out bullshit. Sorry, Rusty, if I'm not supposed to be cursing. But I think that that's a really important one, especially in the world that we're living in now. Like, and I think this is something that I've sort of encountered too, is like not letting things go that I maybe would have let go for, harmony and kind of helping people stay, together or whatever. I think we've all felt, especially, with just some of the social justice issues that I was indicating earlier, we have an obligation to call things out if we see something not going well, or to the point earlier from Caroline about policies that maybe aren't at the best interest of our team. Like, what is our role as an authentic leader there? So we may have to, hopefully we can change some policies, but we may not be able to change everything. And so if we're able to be honest with our team and say, this is the policy, It's not necessarily, the way I would go about it, but here's how we can work through this together. Here's how we can navigate it in a way that will hopefully, keep everyone's best interests at heart. And then, you have to be careful about calling bullshit on your employer's policies, but as a leader, like where are those lines, and starting to use your voice in that kind of transparent and authentic and intentional way is one way that can help you kind of start moving forward. Like, that's getting a lot of love. Whoever wrote that, well done. Okay. Walking away from impossible leadership situations. Yeah. Oh, I love this too, being willing to ask questions or get clarification. I think that's so important, because you can't, I don't feel like it's very authentic to say, to tell people what to do or pass on policies or guidance if you don't fully know what's going on. And that's one of the things, again, to my point about just sort of going along with things to try to keep harmony. If it's something that I don't fully agree with, or I don't understand, why are we doing this? What is the purpose here? Asking. Trying not to let my burnout affect others. I feel for the person that wrote that, because I think it's really hard, because you want to be vulnerable, and that's what I experienced. I don't want people to people can think I'm okay even if I'm not, but I don't want to mask the fact that I'm fatigued, and that I'm in it just like everybody else. And so I think, how do you maintain that balance of kind of the vulnerability and letting people know if you're feeling this certain way without letting it impact, especially if you're leading a team. I touch on that a little bit in the article as well. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing on that. So again, just kind of thinking about what it means to be your authentic self, and how you kind of get moving in that direction. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is not the answer to burnout. I think it's been my journey and the way that I have tried to help myself kind of move forward, in that, realizing that I don't have to just put on an everything's great vibe all of the time. And that's actually not helpful, and was harming me in terms of moving beyond burnout. So fast forward to almost a little less than 2 years later. I can't believe it will be 2 years since I wrote this article. And again, that was writing. It didn't get published until late 2022. So how are things going now? Where am I in this journey? And we titled the talk here, "We're Still Tired." I just assumed everybody else would agree with me that we're all tired. So yeah, I'm still really tired, and you're catching me at the tail end of the fall semester. So there's that too. But I can say, honestly, I feel a lot less weary than I did when I wrote the article. Last year was rough. I think I was still coming out from the burnout over the last year. It was an even more intense year than the year previous, because it was just, everyone was fully back to normal, and it just felt like a lot. And so I think I just wanted to share that, because I was afraid that everyone would think that I, talked about being burnout and then magically, I'm better and everything's easier. It is better, but there's still some of the aspects there on that scale that we looked at earlier. There's definitely some there. And so I think it's something that probably, even for a really long time, most of us are going to have to contend with. There are a lot of changes in higher ed happening. There's a lot of really dramatic things happening in the world, that, all of that can just start weighing on you. And so maybe partly what I'm hoping to impart today is that you are aware and cognizant of these different factors that can indicate that you're feeling burnout, and then thinking about how you can kind of move past that in terms of just recognizing it and then taking those next steps. So I'm also, I feel like for me personally, being a lot more patient with myself. And I did see that many of you remarked on this as well in that last Jamboard, just being honest that I needed to find a better balance, and I'm prioritizing that a lot more than I used to. And so I hope that I am doing that in a way that also encourages and models that kind of behavior for my team. You know, like, again, taking a couple extra days off around Thanksgiving isn't going to cure your burnout, but giving yourself space and freedom to take those days off, or, you know, to, even if it's just one extra day, vacation day, just allowing yourself to do that and not feeling guilty, right? I think that's just something that we all struggle with a little bit. Maybe not all of us, but many of us do. And so I'm trying to be more patient and encourage myself to have that balance, and really trying to impart that to those on my team as well. So then also just thinking about those sparks and thinking about the idea of being, you know, true to my authentic self, and then celebrating the work that's happening with my colleagues and across our profession. This is just another quote from the article that still kind of speaks to me. I think one of the ways that I was able to sort of pull myself out and get some, like a you know, shake off some of my frustration and try to get a new perspective a couple of years ago, that I'm absolutely still doing now, is just looking for those moments that there are great things happening, that people are doing really amazing work, and celebrating that work. It's, you know, I don't want it to be about me. If I can make room for the great work to happen, then I'm really happy to do that, and I'm glad if I can. But just looking for those little sparks and those little things where impacts are being made, and people are, you know, doing really great work. And I think that's something we can do with our, you know, across the profession as well. So I do, okay, it's 1:50. I did have one more Jamboard that is just kind of a takeaway from today. So what's one concrete step that you're taking to move away from burnout? Oh yeah, Paige, definitely swearing helps. And I realized after I apologized for repeating the bullshit comment that I also have a curse in this slide too. So yep, that's it. Just do it. That makes you feel better. Anyway, so if you would like to do that one last Jamboard, you're very welcome to do that, to put some notes there. But since we don't have a lot of time left, you're welcome to type something in the chat if you would like to, or again, if you would like to come off mic and talk a little bit about some of the concrete steps you're taking to move away from burnout. So you've heard about some of mine. It's a work in progress. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to, I do have a slide here of lots of resources for you. So I'm just going to put that in the chat, so you've got that information. And, you know, just curious, how tired is everyone? Other questions or thoughts or perspectives that you all would like to share? I think we had plenty of time for some self-reflective moments and quiet, non-verbalizing. But if anyone wants to share anything else. Yeah, Rebecca, give up on trying to be friends. Never expect hope for gratitude. Yeah, that's really hard. I feel like you typing that means you deserve that gratitude. And so I don't know what the specific instances are, but keep doing what you're doing. Yep, Jennifer, definitely learning to say no. That's really important. Especially if you're on the scale where you're feeling a little extra exhausted about the work. Just, you know, the waking up and going to work every day and kind of trying to do new things. Sometimes saying no is the only way that you can help provide that space. And oftentimes I think it's us that tell ourselves not to say no. So just kind of thinking about giving yourself permission for that. Not qualifying the no. Yeah, Jennifer, moving, getting settled, like that, those years, any change, like everything was a change. And then if you added on to those, just kind of the bigger moment of the pandemic with any kind of a life update, really, really hard to sort of navigate all of that. And yeah, still feeling the impact of it. That's one of my questions is like, when is it gonna even out? I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. When no is not an accepted response. That's a tough one. I think it is probably pretty contextual. I think that from my perspective, in that case, I would have additional context beyond the no. And you know, I think you've probably heard this before, but the sort of improv answer, no, but, or, you know, no, unless, yeah, Elaine. And thinking about why are you saying no, or what makes you want to say no, and then what would make it a little bit easier. And if it's a fully like you just can't, then coming up with an alternative suggestion. If it's something that you can't say, I can't, figuring out what needs to move or what needs to shift in order for you to be able to focus or have the capacity for that thing. And if anyone else has ideas on that one, please share, because that is a eternal issue for librarians, I think. As we're wrapping up here, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and for sharing in the way that you shared. I really appreciate the opportunity from Rusty just to be here today, to be able to share with you all. I think that there is a lot of this sort of work that we need to do and conversations that we need to have together. So I'm happy if anyone ever wants to reach out, we can set up a little mini discussion group to follow up.
Yeah, and thank you, Melissa, for joining us today for this, and everyone else who's taking their hour of their day, because it's hard to find that hour of the day. I think Melissa and I just ran from meetings just to get here, and I know that you all probably did too. So thank you for joining us, and thank you again, Melissa, for being here.
My pleasure.
Great. I'm gonna stop recording.